Comment, bienvenue. Welcome to a slightly slimmed down Cladding Matters. As ever, we are joined by Hamish McClare of Sarge Convey and Zara Olibocus of Nexa Law. Now, we talk about things to do with cladding and also all the bits around it. Today's topic is no exception. Why MHCLG's fast track plans miss the point? What are we referring to here, Hamish?
Well, the main part of the topic is to do with what we call the external wall system. Now, this is one of the, whilst we speak about cladding, that is clearly one of the most important things. But more recently, we've also been speaking about the safety internally of the building rather than just the external cladding. But when you actually think about it, if we can't get the external bit clear and straight, what chances do we have? Now, we've had an incident this week, and if anybody read the article which was used to promote this particular sort of topic, you will actually sort of notice that the comment was made about, let me get a journalist, Vicky Spratt, who was explaining about a situation that we have a Building Safety Act, and within that sort of Safety Act, there's all sorts of things looked at, and for some particular reason, we have buildings at 11 meters, buildings at 18 meters. Anything 11 meters below is apparently doesn't need any fire risk assessment, which is just called the appropriate assessment is EWS1, external wall, and it has to be a specific aspect of one as well to ensure it's completely clear. Now, there isn't a demand for any external wall checking if a building is below 11 meters. Now, as Zara has very often explained in the past, if your only means of escape from one of these particular types of buildings because it's caught fire is out of the window, you're still seriously at risk. So why should those buildings be excluded? But we have this absurdity now that in certain instances, and one of them was mentioned by this Vicky Spratt, whereby the lender refused to lend money against the flat because it didn't have an EWS form. Now, if they're doing that because they've chosen to, are others going to actually join in? Now, we had a situation yesterday, we were speaking about this new bill that's been passed in the House of Commons, which is yet to become law. We don't know when the heck it's going to become law. This was all to do with, if you like, different rights being changed, the switch being strengthened, so the tenants are now in charge of the situation. And to compound all of that, the new TA6 forms or the TA7 forms have come, and none of this is helping with the confusion. So what can anybody do, particularly in Zara's position, to say how safe or what is the risk of purchasing a property which could fall, might not fall into any of these particular sort of entrapments, which doesn't have the appropriate sort of cladding information, whether or not it's going to be privately rented or whether it's actually going to be rented by the council.
How many meters was that the height below which things just never catch fire?
11 meters.
No, I think you've got it. Let me just clarify something for you, Hamish.
All right. Thank you.
So, fire risk assessments are required for any building with 2 or more domestic properties. Yep.
Right.
You've got to have a fire risk assessment where there's common areas. But now they're basically classifying the outside of the building as being a common area. So even if you've got no internal shed areas, the outside is still classed as a common area. So somebody needs to look at the outside of a building under fire risk assessment, and make a statement within that risk assessment about external walls. Now, EWS1 is a completely different matter, and it's meant for those buildings 18 meters and above, which is 6 stories or more. But don't get me started on the government's odd way of measuring these buildings. But that form basically comes with a whopping big disclaimer on the top saying not to be relied upon by buyers or mortgage lenders when making an assessment as to whether or not to buy. Now, what I think particularly might have happened in Vicky's case, and I was told this by a senior surveyor who does valuations for lenders, and apparently it's causing lots of headaches, is that some lenders ignore the RICS guidelines and they just do what they like. And the way that they get people to check the building out, so not just a valuer, they want a fire safety engineer to go out and check out the building for them, is to basically say they won't lend without an EWS1, even if the building is under the 18-metre height for the EWS1. BSA is 11 metres. So this is why it's all a complete muddle and a mess, because you haven't got a consistent height limit. And as I've said before, whether it's 3 stories or 4 stories, if your only way in and out is out of a window, and let's face it, these modern new builds, you know, the windows don't open wide enough for someone to get out, you're still going to break something, aren't you?
Well, I just looked up survivability at different heights, and apparently from 10 to 13 feet, which is only 3 to 4 meters, often results in serious fractures or spinal injuries. Around 6 to 7 meters, high risk of fatal head, chest, or spine trauma, and anything over 9 meters, fatal or results in life-changing injuries. So what we're saying here is, even at their minimum level here, which is what you said, 11 meters, you're still looking at checking out if you decide to jump out the window there anyway, unless they suddenly built a mattress factory underneath. The other thing is, I note, are you saying that even though it states on the EWS form itself, do not use this to make a life-changing decision with, yet insurance companies and other companies themselves tie their decision on what premium's going to charge, or if they're even going to insure at all, to that very form?
It appears so, Gareth.
Well, this is nonsense.
It is nonsense, yes.
My goodness.
It is nonsense. How is somebody supposed to make a decision? And this is tying into what the government want to do about, you know, putting out important information. But I don't know if you saw that story in the news about a prominent housing association. The manager was recorded telling an employee to basically fake a notice by sticking it up on a blank wall and taking a picture of it. So we've got, you know, you can digitize as much as you want, but as a lawyer, we're looking for the evidence, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So if that evidence is being faked, and we had that spate of the fraudulent EWS ones at the beginning of the year,
yes,
how are we supposed to put trust in the system when there's, you know, a whole, you know, suite of people that could be lying to you, and there's no accountability, there's no punishment for them telling you porcupines.
This is what worries me about this whole of this stuff. You've got contradictory or confusing information being required from various different sources. Then you've got disclaimers on them which says, yeah, you need to gather all this information, but for goodness sake, don't rely on it. And then finally, you've got confusing leads on it and no teeth whatsoever. Hamish, how can this persist in a situation where the householder, nay, the every part of this, from a professional like Zara through to yourself, are desperately looking for clarity?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have the clarity. We don't have any full statements, and with the amount of confusion that currently exists, I don't know how on earth the likes of Zara are able to assess a risk and feel 100% confident about what they're saying to their client. And I think some of the other things Zara said, even though using their due diligence and the effective way that they interpret the information that they can actually understand, people are saying to Zara, hey, hang on, look, we're not interested in that. We just want to get into the property.
Yeah, and the problem with that, of course, Zara, is that you, with the best will in the world, you're giving them this advice, and because they're desperate, they're ignoring it.
Yeah, but you can't help people then. You can only do what you can do to advise them of the risks, and it's up to them if they want to take it. And some people are just see the reduced values in these property and thinking, they all think that property values will be going up, when what I'm seeing out and about is that, the value of flats have dropped significantly, and some people are selling them for less than they bought them for, just to be able to get out. And this is particularly prominent within shared ownership, where you've got loads of people that are stuck that cannot sell their flats.
Right.
Going back to being upfront and honest. This lady that contacted me a few weeks ago, having bought a flat in July, a brand new flat. In September, she received a Section 20 notice, which is a consultation about being billed for extra work, and this was in relation to fire safety. Now, surely they should have thought of that when they were, the conveyancer should have done the due diligence and asked for all of this information. And why on earth on a new build flat should she be paying for this? That should be covered by the warranty provider, or if it's a significant defect, why isn't the housing association going after the developer? Why are they just landing the bill?
Surely the default position should be that this fire safety of new build should then not fall upon the purse of the homeowner. It should have been done at the point of planning, that they should have put in the relevant fire safety. Am I being stupid here, Zara?
No, you're not being stupid. You're talking common sense. But with some of these permissions where they sit on it for years on end, they don't update it and they just build it however they want. And then once it's built, they suddenly realise, oh, this is not good. We've got to fix this. But, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes between the developer and the housing association. A lot of these leases will say you're not allowed to make any claims on the warranties without our permission. So I'm just like, that's very odd, because you're selling it with a structural warranty. And yet the housing association retains that warranty. But if you buy from if it was just you and the developer, you as the leaseholder would get that warranty.
Goodness.
So you can claim on it, but it's all kind of murky waters when you've got third parties involved.
Hamish, it seems to me that this is about as clear as mud.
Well, I think Zara's got to sort of leap off sort of fairly quickly. And I don't know if there's anything that Zara can add, because we can actually sort of continue. There's a couple of other instances, because it is like mud. And I don't know if there's any clarity that Zara can give us just before she has to depart.
Well, we are on the last 40 seconds of the show anyway. Zara, if you could give us your last thoughts on this, something cheery and upbeat would be lovely.
Oh, you got me there, Gareth. It's Friday. Yay!
Okay, so through this confusion, do you believe there'll be a coming together so that there will be a clear path for both you, for conveyancers, for Hamish, for all parts, so we know what part needs to be played here? Or is it going to continue to become ever more murky?
Well, I think the lawyers need to gather together to try and beat the propaganda machine that is being spun out, not only by MHCLG and whatever they're called, but also all the other sort of interested parties that are basically saying, oh, let's put information into digitization. It will make things quicker. it's not going to make things quicker if you've got these underlying problems that the government don't want to address. And if they're basically going, yes, we'll build 1.5 million homes,
Right.
but there's no guarantee for the person who's buying that home that they won't end up having to pay to fix it because the structural warranties aren't paying out. I don't know if you've seen Dan Bruce's story. You know, the insurance provider is now taking him to court, and it's just like bonkers. You know, the insurers should be paying out, not making the homeowner who is paid in good faith for this property to pay for the developer mistake. It's completely bonkers. And until the people who are doing new build conveyancing gather together and say enough is enough, we are not going to take any more nonsense from you developer people, and standardize the developer contracts and make sure there's some kind of recourse for homeowners without having to take hideously expensive legal proceedings. Because, you know, the people that I represent, you know, they are on the affordable housing scale, and they're going down that route because they've got no other choice. And they've only got that kind of, they're in that desperation to keep a roof over their heads, but they're basically entering into a one-sided finance deal, which could end up very, very badly for them.
Hamish, on that cheery note, would you care to take us home?
Well, I think we have to accept that we have a situation with so many irregularities, so much confusion, that there is a vast amount that needs to be done. And unfortunately, it is really up to the strength, I believe, as Zara's pointed out, the lawyers to themselves to say, look, enough is enough. Because what is happening, we've got the experienced lawyers also leaving because they're saying, well, look, there's so much onus being put on us now. There's so much we have to do compared to what we did 3, 4, 5, 10. In fact, compared to 20 years ago, it is absolutely insane that the prices haven't actually even gone up with it. So they're expected to do all of this work to find out what the risk is, only to find out they don't have the information to confirm what the risk is. And the government seem to be hell-bent on getting properties put up, whether they are safe or not for people to live in. And whilst that actually continues, I fear there is no escape. We are just going to be confused and confused and confused. And a number of these properties are going to have to be either remediated or the people thrown out without anywhere to live, as we find being the standard thing at the moment. So the councils themselves, and it's a long time since we've spoken about councils, we need to get back on track. The councils need to stand up for their residents as well. And if they stood up for their residents, that would itself start making a difference. But until that happens, the council's not standing up for them. No local government, no senior government. And in fact, as Zara said, there are all these people who have a financial interest in producing data without understanding what that data needs to be telling people. So
last time I checked, I thought the council's purpose was to stand up for their residents, but maybe I've got that wrong.
No, you've got that wrong.
I'd like to thank, as ever, Zara Olibokas, our expert from Next to Law, and of course, voice of reason, Hamish McClay at Search Convey, and to all yous out there. We have an ongoing discussion here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully next week we will have Steve back and normal service can resume. But until then, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and hopefully we'll find an end to this murky nonsense very soon. Who knows? It could be the lawyers or revolting. I never thought I'd say the lawyers are revolting, but there you go. Anyway, so moving swiftly on. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll polish through the moon, but their word always fails.